Hey, what's up, everybody? Today is a special day. We've been doing NBA breakdowns through most of the season, but the seasons are changing, and we still are going to have some NBA stuff for you. Heading into the playoffs, we'll have some things and going to continue through the end of the year. But MLB kicked off yesterday, and we are going to be doing throughout the Major League Baseball season some breakdown shows like we did for the NBA, where we go game by game. And today I have the baseball savant JJ with BetCrushers on the screen with me. So what's going on, man?
Oh my gosh, what are you trying to butter me up? I work for free anyways.
It's a good price, man. I can't beat
Oh
that.
man.
So,
Yeah, for
uh,
sure. Well, if you call being a savant spending way too much time in the off season getting ready, but that's what I got to do.
yeah, man. Well, that is what I call it. Honestly, like that, the depth of knowledge that you have going into a season is pretty unparalleled. So, if there's somebody to talk to as we kick things off, you're the one. So,
Appreciate
uh,
it.
like the shirt too, man. You had to feel good about yesterday.
Man, that was a surprise and a half. I think we'll get into game 2 of that series here before too long, but happily surprised, glad they wrote it out. The bullpens stuck together. Big surprising win.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the Reds are on the way to the World Series. I mean, undefeated, it's
Want
a
to
great
know?
start. So,
Yeah, right. It runs through Atlanta, they say.
yep. Well, hey, so we talked briefly before, but would love. So we're in day 2 of the MLB season, and I know,
Yep.
I capped like maybe 2/3 of the MLB season last year. That was really what got me into it. And this was
Yeah.
my first full season with NBA, and you just like learn a lot about how the season kind of goes in different waves and stuff. So would love to just, before we jump into the games, get your thoughts on how do you go about capping the beginning of a Major League Baseball season?
Well, I mean, I like most, preferred to sit out for 2 or 3 weeks to try to collect data. Up until about 3 4 years ago, where I kind of made the conscious decision to spend a lot of time in the off season and try to shape my numbers to be ready for day one of the season. I still find that it's the starting pitcher equation that is the trickiest. The first couple weeks,
Uh,
first 3 starts, and especially this year, we're seeing. We saw Shane Bieber on a pitch count, 70 pitch count yesterday. We saw Cole get yanked, rather early today. I mean, he had a long first inning, but you're seeing that. You're seeing, pitchers like Giolito, I think, got pulled a little bit earlier today too. So you're seeing that challenge, the product of a condensed spring training as well. But other than that, I try to be ready by shaping my numbers. Obviously, the books are as well, but I figure if I can put the time in, I'm looking at last year as one thing. But there are some fantastic, projection people, player level projection people out there that you can really start to see, what some expected changes are from year to year for the given team on a player by player basis. So that's really
mm,
where I'm at to be ready for the season.
yeah, that's huge. Do you the pitch count for starting pitchers? Do you think that's a primarily a function of the condensed spring training, or do you think that's a trend we're going to see um,
Um,
throughout the season, like shorter and shorter pitch counts for pitchers?
Good
For
question.
starters,
I
for starters, I mean.
For starters, yep. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know about how long this is going to persist, but I know in watching these games, they talked about, like, Bieber yesterday was prescribed, but I think you're seeing managers not want these starters that maybe just made a couple brief, spring training, grapefruit league, cactus league starts to try to go 80, 90 pitches, no
Yeah.
matter who they are. I mean, Garrett Cole, especially if they have, are getting overworked, they're getting guys on base, high stress type situations, they may or may not be ready. No need to try to get into an injury situation with some of your big horses on game 1, game 2 of the season. So I think that's more of a function of the condensed spring training, not getting enough reps, not wanting to turn into a 2020 situation where there was a lot of concern for people getting hurt because of the short spring training. I think you're
Okay.
seeing some of the big guns get treated with a little bit of care.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense too. And one of the reasons why I know many people, and to some extent myself included last year, like to look at first 5, or there's a lot of even first 3 markets available now where you
Uh,
don't have to, you don't have to worry about the bullpen as much. So,
yeah, yeah.
um, All right, man. Well, let's with that said, let's go ahead and jump into the game. So we are primarily for the breakdown today focusing on the 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern games and after. However, I told JJ if we were going to do this, we
Yeah,
had to add in the Twins game. I mean, if
of
we get a
course.
cover of the Twins, I'm in for it. And I'm hoping to get some good news from JJ, what he thinks about my Twins today, too. So, Mariners are at the Twins today. Starting pitchers, Robbie Ray and Joe Ryan are the
Yeah.
starters. So, what do you think about this one, man?
I hate to disappoint you because I actually don't have any
Oh,
action on it. We talked before opening day. I mean, this is the opening day game
yep.
postponed today, just like this Boston Yankees game. We talked about it. I was definitely on the Minnesota side. I think the line just drifted a little bit. Intended to wager on this game on Thursday. We have good weather. It's cool, but you have a nice stiff breeze blowing out. Uh, Again, nothing on the game. I have a lot of respect for Ray. I think last year Cy Young effort was spectacular. I
Yep.
think you have to punch in a little bit for the quote unquote regression. But I still have a lot of respect for him, and I have respect for Ryan too. But you still have about a half a run, half run FIP, ERA, whatever difference between these two. You still have
Mhm.
this what I think kind of an issue with the lefties being the weaker side for Minnesota. I put about an 8% upgrade to the Seattle lineup, pretty even against lefties and righties with the addition of Frazier, Jesse Winker for sure. So yeah, definitely getting them up there close, if not right around where the Minnesota, offense would be, short of going against the lefties. I'm going to be a spectator in this one, definitely pulling for Minnesota, but I think we're going to have a pretty good game here. If anything, I would maybe tend towards a little bit of the over, but it's tough. I hesitate to get too far into totals, given not really seeing how far these starting pitchers are going to go, especially.
Yeah, so two things. And I didn't say this up front, but just to be clear, well, I guess I mentioned it, but like I am starting to look at games, and I'm looking back at some of the numbers I looked at last year, but
Sure.
just not feeling a ton of confidence in it until I start seeing how some stuff plays out.
Yeah.
But so, do you like a question I would ask? Is last year I know I put a lot of emphasis on looking at specific lineups and then the pitchers in terms of how they tended to perform against lefties or righties. And sometimes
Yep.
pitchers are pretty even on either side. Other times there's a significant difference in terms of how they do against people from different sides of the plate. So
Yeah.
and this is looking back at last year's numbers, but Robbie Ray, incredibly dominant versus lefties, still was good
Yep.
versus righties. Joe Ryan, sort of the opposite, like dominant versus righties and pretty good versus lefties.
Right.
Um, do you put any stock in that in terms of like the lineups they'll
Yeah.
face today, or kind of wait and see?
I do. I do. I think I factor that in a little more heavily on the batter's side, but certainly
Okay.
you have to look at splits. There's strong tendencies for players. I kind of I seem to want to maybe aggregate teams, like the composition of the teams, because of the very nature. I mean, this is my philosophy of the very nature of baseball as a sport. We're talking about 300 batting average being very successful, sort of thing. You're going to find, if you look at a player's line, box scores, if you will, and from game to game, if you're looking at their game stories, if you will, how the numbers face out, the the OBP, slugging, whatever you're looking at, is going to fluctuate varied, because there's you know not much difference between a 1 and 3 day or a 2 and 4 day
Yeah,
and an 0 and
right.
3 by number, but the impact on the
Right.
game is much more significant. So I find there to be a lot of ebbs and flows. There's a lot of really good prop people, a lot of good player type people on a game to game thing, on a game to game basis. I'm looking a little more bigger. I'm playing, 100, 162 games, depending how deep I want to get into the season. And I'm kind of spreading out that profile across a bunch of different, or a lot wider range of games. So I, you take some nights, where a good team that should be hitting ain't hitting. It
Yep.
doesn't mean they're not
Right.
good. It's just that
That's
the
right.
numbers didn't line up.
Yep. Yep. That makes sense. So one last thing I'd ask about this, because I really haven't looked into it at all. Anything on how the bullpens shape up for these two teams? Just because when I look at it, pitching wise, I mean, like you said, there are differences, but two solid
Yeah.
pitchers at least going, which is to be expected in the first game of the year for both teams. Do you see any significant difference between the bullpens for these teams or no?
So the Seattle bullpen's a little something that, I think you had some really back end guys. You had back end guys that surprised, were excellent. I think they'll still be good this season, but really, to a degree, I think really outpitched their underlying metrics. So
Mm,
uh, that on a season wide scale is going to play out tonight. You have a good Seattle bullpen. You have a
okay.
decent Minnesota bullpen as well. I'm not necessarily thinking there's a whole lot of edge for
Okay.
game one of the season where all hands are on deck. So, kind of even keeled when it comes to getting to that fifth, sixth inning and beyond today.
Yep. All right. Well, not the news I was hoping for, especially
Eh,
these are the kind of games where I get so tempted to bet like a fan too. Like I think I've gotten that out of
yeah.
me for the most part. But first game of the year for my team, I might
Yeah.
go put like $10 on them,
Yeah,
just for fun.
completely.
So
And it's interesting because it's almost as if I would prefer that I'm looking at for the first 5, I think you have a little greater edge with Minnesota in
okay.
a weird way than before it gets to the opposite way around. I think, Ray has the edge to a degree because of that, but I think that edge starts to peter out as they get to the bullpens because I think
Mm,
that's a little more even match versus the half run difference between the starters. And again, depending on how long Ray goes. He may be shortened as
right.
well, which really helps Minnesota, obviously. But the fact that that lefty split is a challenge for that Twins team, the quicker they get him out, the quicker they start to neutralize that early advantage.
Yep. Okay. All right, awesome. And I mean, this is great stuff, man. Because really, what I do try to make picks when there's edges, but a lot of this is just trying to get good information out there too, right? So
Yeah,
that
it's
people can make
it's a
their own
challenge.
decisions. So,
You're
yep.
right. You're right.
So, all right. Well, let's go on to the next one. Next up, I've got the Mets at the Nationals. Nationals, and these were number. I was out today, so these are lines from
Yeah.
earlier in the day. This may have moved some. Mets were minus 180 and Nats plus 155, 9 total. In
I
this one, it looks like so Max Scherzer going for the Mets and Josiah Gray for the Nationals.
Yeah,
What?
that actually I think has come down a little bit. Last I checked, yeah, they're about 160. Mets are about a 160 favorite,
Okay,
which is interesting. Now it's kind of starting to get into where
150 on
maybe,
DraftKings. Even I just looked.
yeah, that
So
they're starting to get a little more appetizing. 180 is a
yeah,
pretty hefty price, even though it's Scherzer, even though it's the Mets. We know the Washington Juan Soto's, and company. So
right. Can he
you know,
go
it's
4 for 4 with 4 home runs?
baby.
Yeah, right, right.
But they gotta hold the other team to three runs then. But
That's right.
it's a challenge because I think you really want to look at this Washington team when they're going up against kind of a marginal left-hand pitcher, not Max Scherzer. Then again, there kind of is a little bit of value of fading some of these bigger name pitchers
Mm,
early in the season. Again, if you're expecting them to run 6 innings, and they're getting yanked in the fifth or after five, that really kind of pulls away from a lot of that large value. But these offenses obviously have some disparity there, especially with Washington against righty here, and it's I'm not sure what we see out of Scherzer early, and that's probably what kept
okay.
me off of laying even a -1 or something like that. He's still like a low 3 FIP pitcher, season long. But how long is he going to go tonight? You obviously had the hamstring issue that pushed his start back.
Mm,
But at least I haven't been able to find anything about a pitch count or anything like that. Like Shane Bieber was ahead of the game yesterday. Josiah Gray, very interested to watch him pitch. He came from the Dodgers last summer in that big trade.
yep.
Much like, say, since he's starting pitcher tonight, there's not a whole lot for me to really dial in on to be ready to back or fade somebody like this with not a lot of MLB experience on, their second game of the season, his first start of the season. Just not a lot for me to really read into. Again, we have a lot of ammo for the season. We don't have to fire all the bullets day one, day two of the season. So I'm sitting back on this, and really, you have a pretty strong run and a half discrepancy between these two starting pitchers on the macro view again. So I think the price
Yeah.
seems right, at the minus 160 or something. If it dipped down lower, if you like the value hunt, whatever it is, I'm going to sit on the sidelines, but I think you're starting to get into 150 territory is pretty appetizing for the Mets.
Is there a number? I mean, I guess you said it's starting to get appetizing, but is there a number that would entice you onto like a
Hmm.
-1 for the Mets? Is like what would it have to get to for you to think there was, or is it just too much uncertainty? It doesn't really matter.
There's too much uncertainty. I think,
Okay.
let's just say I'm using the same kind of estimates, the same range for where I expect these starting pitchers to be, and it's their fifth starts of the season. Different
Yeah.
story. I think now we're getting a situation where I would do the run line or -1 on the road at around 150, around where it's at now. But
Okay.
again, it's just too much uncertainty for me.
Yep. Doesn't work for tonight. Okay. Um, two, and this may be the uncertainty thing again, but two at least potentially really good pitchers, is 9 a high total, or given these offenses, does that make sense to you?
I'm looking at my sheet. 9, I think, is kind of a high total, actually. Yeah, I would maybe
Okay.
look under if anything.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's just, I mean, again, without having gotten back into it too much, but
Yeah,
knowing that there are high expectations for Gray and that Scherzer certainly can be a shutdown starter. 9 just
yeah,
seemed up
and
there.
it's
So
it's a cool, calm, evening. So if anything, there's a little bit of bias to the under because of that. There's
okay.
just mostly because of the temperature and the wind, not much effect.
Right. Okay. I was just trying to look. Oh, they don't even have Mets -1 on here. So okay, great. So that's the Mets and the Nationals. Next up, Rangers at the Blue Jays. Total is 9 in this game as well. I just checked the odds, and the Rangers plus, I see a plus 155 out there, but it looks like this is close. Plus 150 and minus 170 on the
Yeah.
Blue Jays. John Gray for the Rangers, and Jose Barrios defecting from the Twins over to the Blue
Yeah.
Jays, going tonight for the
It wasn't his choice, if
Jays.
that makes you feel any
Hey,
better about
if you leave the
Barrios.
Twins,
Yeah.
you're dead to me. That's I
All
don't
right,
I
fair enough. Josh Donaldson,
just
too
no,
much
I'm
for
just
you,
kidding.
right? Yeah.
Just kidding.
Yeah, no, fair enough. It's interesting. This one is where I think the total interests me a little bit more than the side. I can't really argue with that price. I shape my numbers here, run it through, and see where I'm at given these two starters, which I think are a pair of very, very solid starters. Not you kind of your prototypical ace type of guys, but really good number twos on a good team, if you will. I think that the line price -160 is fair given everything that's at stake. You have the Texas lineup; it's been upgraded. There's been so much to be said about that, it's mostly because they were one of the teams that made big splashes before the lockout. So you knew they had Simeon, you knew they had Seager. After the lockout, they make that kind of big trade. We'll just say through Minnesota. The Yankees, Minnesota, the Rangers kind of got involved with some guys. They get a Mitch Garver behind the plate who can hit. So, you have an upgraded lineup, but it still has holes. This is not the year,
Okay.
they're building towards that year. They're building to make a run in the AL West. Barrios is far from a slouch. I still have the Jays offense about 10% better, given, kind of the scenario we're looking at right now. So the other thing is I'm not a fan of the Texas bullpen. It's one of the reasons why I actually shied away from the under, whether it be 9.5. Otherwise, I think I'd be going under here in this game. But again, early in the season, I want to see where kind of numbers are settling in before I get too crazy on totals.
Okay. Any thoughts on the Blue Jays lineup this year? Obviously, they were a pretty powerful offensive team last year. Do you
Yeah,
expect that to be the case again?
I do. I do. I mean, I pulled him back a little bit. I mean, Simeon is gone, and he had, I don't know, quote unquote career season at the plate. Excellent. I
Yeah.
mean, not only that, but he was phenomenal at second base. First time he played for second base for however, when he first was with Oakland or early with Oakland, was out of position, but fantastic defensively. So that's a big hole, even though, it's really hard to say that the Toronto lineup has a whole lot of holes. But for them, that is a loss. So I mean, I think you have to kind of bring that back down a little bit. Vladdy is still going to be Vladdy, but there he was, second in the AL MVP behind Otani. without Ohtani playing two ways, it was probably his award. But then you had Simeon, who was right there in the two of the three finalists. So, big season out of that offense last year. Still should be good. Knocked them back a couple percentage points, but otherwise, they should still rake.
Okay. Sweet. Well, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I mean, that stuck with me from the conversation we had a while back about the improvements the Rangers made. So it'll be interesting to see what they look like this year. So
for sure. Yep. Yeah, a little bit of wait and see. Yep.
Yeah. Fair enough. All right. Next up, we've got your Reds plus 160, Braves minus 190, and an 8.5 total. Let me see. Pitchers for this game, Reaver Sanmartin for the Reds, and then Charlie Morton for the Braves.
Yeah, so I mean, here you've got a situation similar to what we're seeing in a couple different spots today, and that's a starting pitcher. I mean, I think he had like 11 or 12 innings last year. He got
I was going to say, honestly, I was like, I don't know who this guy is. So
Yep. So there's the challenge. I mean, if you want to bet this game, you want to get involved, I can't blame you. But at the same time, there's no reason for me to push something where I don't really know what to expect out of him, especially, in a situation where I'll walk it back here a little bit because you look at last night. I mean, since he stole that game, they had that kind of death by 1,000 cuts. We're just blooping guys. Then had a big blow from Brandon Drury, right? He kind of blew the game wide open of all people. And what's weird was lefties should be their really big weak spot this season. And they managed to just kind of dink and dunk on Max Fried, who wasn't completely sharp last night, but you had this just everything kind of pulled together perfectly almost for Cincinnati. Now, I mean, they're going against a righty, so I think they still have the potential to be able to put up enough runs to be competitive, but what are you getting out of Sanmartin? Olsen coming in, he actually helps to even out Atlanta's offensive production against lefties, lessens the split, if you will, by a tick. And you have the Cincinnati team that's still good against righties, like I said. So, I mean, I think in this case, if I had to make a bet, I'd take the dog price, anything around 150 or better. But, just too few innings. Maybe if you wanted to play a team total or something to that effect, that's probably good. I mean, the temperatures are cool. You have a decent breeze blowing out, probably a little bit of a wash when it comes to what the weather's going to do to, ball flight and such. So I don't know. I mean, if you wanted to play the game, I'd play the Reds again. You never know.
Okay. When you talked about team total, is it the Reds team total that you'd be interested in as well? If you were going to be interested in one, or?
Yeah. And, I mean, this is one where I didn't dig really deep into the, derivative markets too much because I knew I was going to stay away. But I think that is one way to, for Cincinnati, again, they're being perceived as being kind of the ugly offense. And, it was an ugly offense until the Drury home run last night, but it was one that just churned through and made runs out of, little dinks and dunks, which, as a Reds fan is fantastic. But if you had the Atlanta side last night, I mean, there's nothing more frustrating than to see that when a team allegedly didn't deserve it. But all that being said, they're going with their stronger side. Charlie Martin's still pretty quality. I think I'm, putting Morton still in that mid 3, maybe upper 3 FIP type of guy on a season wide basis. So a little bit of a conflict, but there could be some potential there to take advantage.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Morton definitely was strong last year. But like you said, not as good against righties as he was against lefties. So it's an interesting thing early in the season, man. I've had this as I try to cap different things where if I think a game is anywhere, and I'm not saying that you're saying this is a coin flip game. I know that's not what you're saying, but I think in terms of trying to identify value, like value, people say value all the time. That gets old sometimes, whatever.
Well,
but like bets worth making, right? Bets worth making.
No problem. Exactly. You're right. Because value is in the IB holder. Like I could argue with you what I think is value and what's not value. If you don't know what your price is, you don't know what value is. That's kind of how you put it. So
Well, and I mean, I think when people talk about value, most of the time what they mean is, I think this has a better chance of happening than what the odds say, right? So like value could be minus 300 if you think it happens 95% of the time, right? But then a lot of times people are referring to something that's plus money. But I do think, man, if you get these games that you think are anywhere close to a coin flip, and you're right over time,
Yeah,
then taking any plus money on that is one strategy to potentially pursue.
sure.
But okay, all right. So lock of the night is the Cincinnati Reds. That's what I
There
hear
you go.
JJ
Yes.
saying.
Love it. Yeah, that's right.
Absolute
Homer
lock.
poll right there.
Go put at least $5 on that right now.
Okay. 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 Well,
All
me and
right.
Yanni, our buddy back in Cincinnati, he fired on him last night and was rewarded handsomely.
Nice.
But good on him. Yeah.
Dude, solid from him. That's
Yeah.
impressive.
He was
See, that's why.
skeptical of he was skeptical of Freed, which,
Okay.
definitely warranted that, so
Yep. Well, I'm gonna just pretend that his strategy was bet the team you like in their first game, and then that's why I'm taking Minnesota.
go
It's
Twins.
it's a perfect strategy. All right. Next up, we got the Astros. This is a game you were on yesterday.
Yep.
Astros at the Angels, even today at 110 on each side, minus 110, 9.5 total. And tonight we have Jake Odorizzi going for Houston, and Reed Detmers going for the Angels.
Yeah, and you can find some plus money on this. I have actually bet this, after I put the morning breakdown article out this morning for this Boston game that's, now in the eighth inning. I kind of dove into the later games a little more. This was a matchup where these teams did play last night. So, I tend to want to see, whether there's any significant changes, injuries or something like that. I mean, you look at
Right.
Pittsburgh yesterday, first inning, I think in the field, they're one of their biggest bright spots of the season. Brian Hayes, left with an injury, some
Oh,
sort of arm
really?
injury or whatever. Yeah, so he left in the first inning. So,
Wow.
I mean, those are the sorts of things that,
Oh, man.
well, I don't want to overblow that situation, but, now we're getting into where teams are playing every day. You got to be careful of big impact guys getting hurt. So I wanted to see where this was going to go and make sure everybody was good after yesterday. But I am back on Houston again. I mean, I got them at plus 108, I think. I see
Yeah,
a
I just
109 still out there.
plus
So
108 out there right now. I'm betting it
yeah,
as we
and
speak.
I'm not huge on Odorizzi, and Reed Detmers, he's actually stepping in for Patrick Sandoval. I think Sandoval was penciled in as the starter for yesterday. Both of them are lefties, so not a real huge sea change in terms of how you were looking at the game. Even though, Houston is fantastic against. It doesn't matter, what arm they're pitching with. But realistically, I mean, Sandoval's really good, but I didn't take too much off. Maybe a quarter run drop down from Sandoval to Detmers. I mean, he's their number one organizational prospect, and actually have Detmers a touch better than Odorizzi here. Again,
Okay.
young guy. Don't want to put too much confidence in that sort of thing, but I think he could actually outlast Odorizzi. I don't know if he'll get through the fifth. But again, last night you had Framber Valdez went, I think 6 2/3, so he ate a lot of time. They did throw their bullpen. They threw their closer last night, a couple other decent arms, but not as much bullpen high leverage type guys getting used as the Angels because Otani got pulled on the earlier side of the game. But the way I'm looking at this, I'm going back to the well. They weren't spectacular on offense, but they were really good. They were good enough to kind of get through Otani and get that 3-1 win. Houston's lineup did enough, and I think last night was the favorable side against a lefty for the Angels. Now Valdez isn't just any lefty, but that's probably going to pan out as their strong side again this year. Still good against righties, but I've got Houston significantly better at the plate given the scenario tonight. 12, 15%. I'm going to take the plus money again. This isn't quote unquote value type of thing like we talked about just because it's plus money, but I got to take them. I'm still very high on their offense. Pitching be damned. I think their bullpen will be fine. Both bullpens are good. So I'll take the plus money.
I like it, man. I remember that from last year. One of the things trying to jump on or off was, Houston would go on these, and not saying they are starting right off with this, but these offensive explosions for 5, 6,
Yeah.
7 straight games. And it was
Yeah.
almost like, yeah, it doesn't matter because they're going to score 8, 9, 10, 11 runs. So, yeah, it doesn't matter how their pitching is. So,
For sure. Yeah.
but,
Yeah. And I think last year was a little bit different because, there was a little bit of foresight of the Astros offense bouncing back to a degree after, a pretty crummy 2020, short season type
Yeah.
of thing, but they heated up in the playoffs and they really picked up right where they left off there. So there were some very good opportunities early, at least when you're looking at team totals and stuff. I think we talked about this with D and Yanni on his MLB preview, the Wager Rager preview. We talked about that, how you could still find first 5 inning team totals on Houston early in the season against, mid-tier level starters
Mm,
that were, it's like plus 125 for over 2.5, and they were getting
wow.
there. Those dried up after a few weeks,
Yeah.
this is, they lost Correa, but this is still a very potent lineup.
Yep. For sure. Yeah, they did lose Correa. That's right. Okay. Well, let's any thoughts on the total here before we move on? I mean, just talking about or does that seem just kind of what you'd expect?
It's about right. I've kind of, given that it's a still warm evening, so I think there's a little bit of tick there, but not a whole lot, 80 degrees and getting cooler in the evening. But nothing, I've kind of got this from both teams' perspective somewhere around 9.5. So pretty concurrent. I'm not going to go under, not going to go over.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. Well, the last game of the night here is the Padres at the Diamondbacks.
Yeah.
9-run total in this game. And is it Mania and Kelly still? Is that
That's what
the
I'm seeing. Yeah. So you
okay?
got Mania fresh off the trade from Oakland,
Yeah, that's
the
right.
fire sale up there in the Bay.
Yep. Moving to a different part of California.
Yep, that's right, Southern. But yeah, I looked at this, didn't really put a whole lot into it, given you. I think Arizona is, fairly better against lefties, but I'm not sure this is necessarily the one I want to pick on. This is a team kind of like Washington where, they are not a great offense. Everybody knows that, but there are going to be spots where you either want to back them, whether it be on the the spread or some sort of team total or whatever. They got it done last night, took advantage of a bullpen that was willing to give up runs from the Padres, which is a little
Bottom of the
bit
ninth, right? All their
bottom of
runs
the
in the
ninth.
bottom of the ninth.
Yeah, I was happy to have the first
Woo,
first five on San Diego and get out of that one early.
seriously.
So,
Yep.
but I don't know what you can expect when you let a team hang in the game that long, with a two
Mhm.
two nothing lead, that anything can happen there in the ninth. But as far as what we're going to do with this line, I think what we're at 150, something like that. That might be
Yeah.
a touch high. Arizona could surprise a little bit. Again, if they're going to do anything, it's going to be against lefties. So I don't know. I would
Okay.
I would go dog if I had to do anything.
Okay. This is a lot off the numbers, not off of me watching him, but I feel like Kelly was one of those pitchers who often outperformed what I expected him to.
Yeah,
I don't know if that was an impression that was true to you too. I was just going back and looking at his numbers here, and like it just depends almost on which number you look at, right? Like some of the numbers, it's like,
sure.
oh, that wasn't that good, but then like the whip is pretty. I don't know. It's kind of all over the place.
Yeah, and
BABIP,
I'm not
I don't know.
totally sure what to make of this Padres lineup. For the last couple years I've been on the downside with guys like Myers and Hosmer. And now it's probably more of a Machado show than anything. And sure, I mean he can he can do it. Cronenworth's good. You have some good bats, but I don't think they're as potent, as obviously as where they were a couple years ago. Last year, decent, but fell apart. There's still a lot of questions with teams like this. Again, I did back the
Okay.
Padres last night. But that was more of a Darvish type of thing, which he was spinning the ball pretty well. There were some thoughts about him, getting caught up in the sticky substance thing. You saw his spin rate come down after the ban last year. But look, I mean, these guys that may have been relying on it. I mean, especially a veteran like that. I think you have to have some confidence in him. Working on being able to do it without those substances. And we saw that last night against a weaker lineup. So a
Yeah.
lot of wait and see, for
Okay.
some of this. And that's where I am with the Padres tonight.
Makes sense. All right, so I'm gonna make you do one more thing before we wrap this up. I've told you before that one of my favorite bets last year, and I'm definitely going to be looking into this again this year. Maybe trying to just put some focus on it. is on BetMGM, at least, they will have lines where it's like both teams to score 1 run, 2 runs, 3 runs in the first 5 innings, which
Sure.
to me, I found for a significant stretch of the season had a lot of value in games where both teams were in decent offensive spots. So are there any games you'd look at tonight, or if I forced you to pick, well, you're not telling me to go bet it, but
Right.
is there a game tonight where you would say that it's a decent spot for both offenses against the starting pitchers they're facing, where maybe that both teams to score 1 or 2 runs in the first 5 would make sense?
Probably the Cincy Atlanta game.
Okay.
Even though we got the uncertainty with Reaver out there, I think there's plenty of chance because I don't know how long he's going to go, and Morton may be a guy who's that. So they may get into the bullpens by the 5th inning, which isn't inherently a bad thing, except for the fact that they may or may not be using one of their stronger higher leverage guys that early in the game. So I think there's still a couple routes to get there for both teams. Again, I think Cincy's still a little underrated, in terms of offense, and this is their better side.
Great. So I will just to throw this out, and this is, I think, why I liked looking at these bets, is because of the plus money that most of the time comes with them, though not always. There are certain situations where it doesn't, but like those 2 teams tonight to score 2 or more in the first 5 is plus 160. So yeah, might be something to consider
in the first 5.
Yeah, first 5.
Yeah.
Plus
wow.
160.
Maybe I need a BetMGM account.
maybe you do. I'm gonna suck you into these bets, man.
Wow. Yeah, I'm surprised. I would take that.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, JJ, it's always good to hang out with you, man. Thanks for
good times.
coming on, and we're going to try to make this happen on a regular basis. Baseball's something I enjoy, but it's also not something I know as well as I know the NBA. So I need people who know it better to hold me accountable and not saying things that are too stupid, So
fair enough. Yeah.
Before we get out of here, real quick, I want to make sure people know where to find the stuff you're doing with baseball or just anything else. So real quick, just let people know where to find the best way to find your stuff.
Yeah. Thanks, Stacey. Yeah. Me and my partner, Yanni, who's, definitely, he's as ingrained in the NFL as I try to stay with baseball. We are at the BetCrushers on Twitter, and we have a website, betcrushers.com, basically a blog type site, where we're putting our handicaps, into article form and put them out there for just take a look, see what you think, fade, follow, enjoy.
Absolutely. Do go give at BetCrushers a follow on Twitter if you're not yet. I will just say, a big part of my introduction to BetCrushers and then eventually getting connected to JJ and Yanni was this became a part of my routine with MLB last year, was just pulling up the articles and reading them. Because if you actually want to dive a little deeper into the MLB and understand what's actually going on, there literally are not probably better sources than the stuff that JJ puts out there on a regular basis. Just really in-depth, insightful stuff about MLB. So if you're interested in that, it's absolutely something you need to go check out. So
appreciate that.
Yeah, no, it's 100% true. So I already started doing that again. I've read everything he put out so far.
Thank you.
MLB. So, all right, man. Well, thanks for coming on, and appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll be again doing this hopefully a few times a week at least, breakdown on the MLB this year. So have a good day. Hope it's a good day betting for you, and we'll see you on Twitter. Have a good one, everybody.